Quite a few of us are back from a luminous, lovely journey to Mecca and Medina. And there is a tradition of sharing some tabarrukat, which are blessings. Think of it as souvenirs from the realm of spirit. And I thought that if you were with us in body for that beautiful journey, then we get to relive some of the sweet memories. And if you were perhaps longing to come, but practically it was not possible this time around, well, what better than to get an opportunity to taste some of the fruits of that journey. So we always begin with a little musical offering of sacred music, and today's no exception. And since the highlight in some ways of our journey was growing closer and closer to God as the all-beloved, and growing closer and closer to the Habib, the Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam, as God's own beloved. So growing closer to the beloved and growing closer to the beloved's beloved. Then I think we will begin with a little short reflection, a salawat, blessings and salutations on the Prophet. And we might just listen to a couple of minutes of this one. And I will share this in the link with you all later. It's got the wonderful title of 1 Hour of Salawat. And since coming back from Medina, I really have not been in the mood to listen to anything really other than blessings on the Prophet. All right.
وسلم على نبينا محمد اللهم صل وسلم على نبينا محمد.
Can you all hear well?
No, actually.
It's a little echoey.
Little echoey. All right. Well, I'm not sure how much exactly background. If I can ask you all to make sure that your own microphones are muted, and then we will do our best. And it may just be that that's what it's going to be for today. So let's give that a shot.
Make sure you share your sound as well.
I did, yeah. But I can try one more time. Optimize. Getting a strange message. Install the... Let's try it one more time.
اللهم صل وسلم على نبينا محمد 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 اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم صل وسلم على نبينا محمد. 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 اللهم صل وسلم على نبينا محمد.
So there is a beautiful and very powerful passage in the Quran Sharif, that states, "Inna Allaha wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi." Indeed, God and the angels send blessings on the Blessed Prophet. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. So those of us who are blessed with faith, so you also send blessings upon him. In other words, when we send blessings on the Prophet, not only in his manifestation as the 7th century Arab Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, born an orphan, raised to be a shepherd and a merchant, but really also in that capacity as the Nur Muhammad, as the light of Muhammad, that spirit of guidance that has been shining since before there was a thing called time, through all the prophets and prophetesses, through all the sages and illuminated beings. And this is the way through which we connect with God. There's something beautifully subtle about the spiritual path, that we both go to God directly, immediately, without any mediation, and we also go through those sages, those luminous beings who make the message real, who make love real, who make beauty real, and without whom these teachings would run the risk of just being words on a page or wonderful stories. But once we've seen them, once we've lived with them, once we have been touched by them, then it's all real. And then God is real. So it's that the two wings of this bird of the spirit, of going to God immediately and going to God through the prophets. And in this case, the first and the last of the prophets, Muhammad. So many of you know that we are told occasionally to whisper our heart's desires into the universe, into the heart of God himself, herself. And just 3 months ago or so, this call, this thirst, this yearning and longing to go to Mecca and to Medina started to really take shape in my heart. And the love for God and the love for the Prophet, alhamdulillah, have always been there. And some 15 years ago or so, I wrote a book about love and devotion towards the Prophet. But somehow it seemed enough to have love and devotion without necessarily taking on a physical journey. And this summer, a few of us had taken a journey together to Turkey, and we were sitting with that luminous female sage, Jamal Noor, And, we get to have an audience with her when we go, which is a really special opportunity. And we kept asking questions. How do we grow closer to God? And she answered, go to Medina. How do we grow in our personal connection with the Prophet Muhammad? Go to Medina. How do we make sure that when we're standing in prayer, that the prayer really feels like an ascension and a mi'raj? Well, by now you guessed it. Go to Medina. And so at some point I thought, okay, well, I'm not a very smart person, but what I'm hearing you say is that we should go to Medina. And in the same way that we go to God directly and through the mediation of the different prophets, I thought, well, I could go just by myself. But ours is a path that always calls for a balance of the personal and the communal. There's some parts of the path that we have to undertake on our own, but we're never alone. And so I just, put out a little, perhaps foolish request, sort of out there. Hello, friends. I'm thinking about going to Medina. If anybody's inclined to come, let me know. And next thing you know, there's a caravan of 25 of us who headed out there, and we just got back about a week ago. And I've taken that week since then to mostly sit in solitude, to really savor the flavor and the fragrance. I've had one conversation with a very dear friend who was encouraging me to go, and but other than that, really just cherishing the memories and the echoes until today. And I wanted to have a chance for us to share it. And what I may do is, I know that we've got a few of our friends who were with us, and I may just invite them, if they don't mind us changing gears just a little bit. You all have heard me talk for so many months, but in the coming months, we're going to be shifting things a little bit. And I may ask, let me see, who do we have here? I see Nazish Jan. And if they're at all inclined after Nazish, possibly Bina Jan. And I see Rabia. And I thought that I just saw Rabia also. She's still, yeah. Maybe could I just ask you each to take about a minute to share something of what stood out for you, and then I will also share some images and memories from this journey. So Nazish Chan, could I invite you to unmute yourself?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Wassalam.
I thought I was prepared to say a few words. I was one of those people who asked Jamal Noor that question, and she didn't wait. She was like, go to Medina. So since then, between June and December, that was the case, that when can I go to Medina? And I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to go with Umidjan and the rest of the spiritual family. It was very special to be in Mecca, to be in Medina. I mean, I feel like I've seen pictures, videos of Kaaba and the Green Dome, but what it was like in body, mind, and spirit to be in that space with the companions that we all are. It was unlike anything that I've ever experienced in my life. Thank you.
Binajan, if it wouldn't melt this imperfect platform called Zoom, could I invite you maybe to say a couple of words as well?
Sure, thank you, Mejan. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Everything that Nazis John said and what I've already Mejan has shared. I was also one of those blessed ones to join this really blessed group of people who were called to Allah's house and to go to Medina Sharif. And there are some people who are here that I know were also in my heart and my awareness that I did bring with me as well. This journey, as Nazis Chan already shared, was special in a lot of ways. One, that you're going to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's house and Medina Sharif, and then you're being called to go with a group of companions. And for me personally, it felt like as if I just got home. I finally arrived home. And there's no place like that, that you can feel belonged or you can feel that you're a part of. And so I don't want to take up too much space, but the call is to keep going back again and again and again. And don't be surprised if you see me, Umejan. If you continue to take people with you, don't be surprised if I become a regular. Thank you.
You know, friends, you read sometimes these stories, for example, about Hazrat Rabia, that when she had gone to do her pilgrimage to the Kaaba, she found that the Kaaba had come to visit her and had met her halfway. And however you hear these kinds of stories, rest assured that if there is at all the yearning and the longing for you to come, or the yearning and the longing for you to come back, then the Lord of the house yearns for you more and has already walked and flown and swam to be with you, wherever you happen to be, in whatever state you happen to be in. I'd love to hear from a couple of other friends who were with us. Tanya, I think I see your luminous face. Would you mind unmuting yourself, dear?
Sure, yes, thank you. Assalamu alaikum, friends. And yes, I had the honor to go with Umijan. And as I remember, as he asked me, there was no question. It was like a dream came true, and a longing fulfilled itself. And to really be at this place, to be at the Kaaba, and it's different, to be at the Kaaba is to, it's to be drawn into a center and where you can rest and where all longing stops. And to be in Medina is just to be and to breathe the wind, like being the breath of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to walk on the earth that he walked, and to find his grace in the luminous faces of the people around. And it was really like being there. And like you, Umijan, I also now I prefer solitude, and I don't even miss this place. It feels like I'm still there, and it's still in me. And I also need to say I'm so grateful in the way how you led this journey. You know, it was with such grace, and even it was the first kind of these journeys, and there were difficulties, but it was so beautiful how you hold everything together, and how all this group from all over the world became friends within a moment, and were held by your love and by your devotion that we all shared. And this played a big role in all this journey and made it even more luminous and graceful. So thank you very much.
Alhamdulillah. Yes. You know, it certainly was not a part of a planning on my part, but I think at some point I looked around and I realized that we have friends from the United States, from Pakistan, from Morocco, from Norway, from Germany, and as is always the case, a majority women, 17 women and 8 men, which there used to be a time where there were very strict policies that women needed to be accompanied by male companions, and some of those rules and regulations have eased up a little bit. And also a significant number of friends who have chosen to embrace this particular and beautiful religion and path. And also some Muslim friends who had been born into a Muslim background, but there was a yearning and a longing and a spiritual awakening at some later point in life. And to also have a space for all of us who come from these different backgrounds, and to do so in an intimate gathering. The same agency that we had used, the next group that they had arriving was 400 people. And you can imagine, you know, with 400 people and megaphones and, you know, it's just a very different scale. And that there's a time and place for that. It doesn't seem like what we are called to do. I see my friend Ahmed, would also love to invite him. Ahmed and I shared a room at some point, along with, in Medina, we had a room of 5 brothers. And that was a wonderful experience. Ahmadjan, if I could maybe invite you to unmute yourself, dear.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So yes, I was in Medina last week. I was in Turkey in the summer, but I'm thankful for that. Jamal, is that her name? You know, suggested that, because I understand now. I understand now. Being there, just the presence there in Mecca and in Medina opens something. It opens the hearts, opens the soul, you know, to receive, you know, like illuminations, tajalliyat, futuhat, whatever it is, that you know, I didn't imagine that I'm gonna receive it that way. I mean, things might have been in my mind, you know, things that I knew before, things. It's just, you know, opens the heart to receive it in a completely different way, to get it from a completely different way. So it was a special visit. Thank you, Omid. Shan.
Thank you so much. Thank you, dear. I'm trying to make sure, do we have any other friends who were with us who might be inclined at all to speak?
Could I share something, please?
Yes,
Rabia.
please. Oh, salam.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. It's so nice to see you and everybody else from the
Thank
trip.
you, Rabia Jan. Please go
But
ahead.
I wrote something down so I don't digress. I'm sorry if it's a little long, but I just wanted to jot my thoughts down. This is my experience leading up to the moment when we first saw the Kaaba. We had 1 month to book our flights, 1 month to apply for visas, to apply for leave, and wrap up all our work before the holidays. Some of us had to explain to friends and family why we had suddenly decided to go to Saudi Arabia for our holidays. Some of us were met with confusion, concerns, advice, warnings, horror stories, sometimes silence, sometimes disappointment. But we were called, so we had to go. Some of us received our visas later than others, causing some anxiety. We had a WhatsApp group, which we used very effectively to bombard Umid-Jan with a lot of questions about the itinerary, about the Ihram, about the process of the Umrah. When do we wear the Ihram exactly? When do we put it on? At what time? Where? At the airport? In Jeddah? In the layover? What do we do? What about me? What about my specific situation? I'm arriving early. I'm arriving late. What do we do? He very patiently and very gracefully answered all of our questions and reminded us to have faith in the one who had called us. And he helped us focus on preparing ourselves, not just logistically, but also spiritually for this journey. We were all arriving in Jeddah at different times from different flights from all over the world. There was a lot of searching, waiting, introductions, exhaustion, excitement. Some of us were meeting old friends from other tours. Some of us were completely new. We headed to Mecca after some waiting and we crashed that night because only a few hours later we had to wake up, regroup in the lobby and head out for our Umrah. We met with our guide who flooded us with information about the process of the Umrah. The best time to do Umrah, he said, was right after Fajr, because between Isha and Fajr is when the Haram is most crowded. He put us in what I can only describe as a military formation. It was like a phalanx, literally. We were asked to guard the person to our left and right, front and back, our fellow comrades. He also told us to avoid looking at the Kaaba until we get to the center and save our first glance, because that's when you're supposed to make all of your prayers and hopefully they all come true. So we marched forward, heads down, arms locked, through the swarms of people that were now exiting the Haram after Fajr prayer. We were disoriented, but we were following and trusting the voice of our guide. We got to an open clearing. He told us to look up, and there it was. There we were. We had made it. We had made it together. Through all of the logistical concerns of the month prior, the mixed reactions, the planning, the traveling in economy for some of us, the exhaustion, the sleep deprivation, we had made it. We were in the eye of the storm. It was surprisingly quiet. We were standing together side by side, but we were also alone with God. I had made it. And there was a moment, although it was fleeting, but there was a moment where everything just melted away. All the exhaustion, all the sleep deprivation, the instructions from our guide, all the prayers that we were supposed to make for people, they just disappeared. And it was one of the most peaceful moments of my life. And I don't think I'm alone when I say that the journey only got more and more beautiful with every passing day, because we then headed to Medina, which was like touching heaven and coming back. And it truly was illuminating. And for those of you here that are hoping to go in the future, I really pray that you get to experience the beauty that we did on this trip and with a group like ours, because it makes all the difference who you go with. And it's important to surround yourself with people that lift you up and support you and make you feel spiritually safe. And this group did that for me. So I'm so, so grateful. And I just want to thank you all, and thank you, Umid-Jan, so much.
Allah, mashallah. Thank you very, very much, dear Rabia Jan. Appreciate it. You know, we some of the friends I had known before from the previous journeys, or from these chai sessions, or from some of the courses that you might have done, and some of the friends I had not. And you know, the going to Mecca and Medina is physically, emotionally, spiritually taxing. It's a rejuvenating and powerful experience, but it also at times pushes you to limits that you may not have known. The crush of humanity is real. It's you and 100,000 of your closest friends at all times. And they're all trying to touch the Kaaba. And so there's not a whole lot of what you could call personal body space there. And so, you know, when friends would call and say that they wanted to come, I would really just ask them first about, you know, did they really feel that thirst and that calling, that yearning? And also, was this the right time for them? Their health, physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, was this the right time and place? And some of the friends, like Rabia Jan, who just spoke, we had a Zoom session, and I think 2 minutes into our conversation, I was like, all right, my dear, I just want you to know this is not an interview. And if you want to come, please do, because there was just such a gentle and beautiful presence and smile, alhamdulillah. So you really have honored us. Do we have any other friends who were there with us who wish to speak before I kind of share some thoughts as well?
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam, alaikum assalam, Rabia Jan. Please go ahead, dear.
So everything that Rabia said was, of course, beautifully, beautifully presented. The crush of humanity, if one focused on that, it would have been impossible, I think. But it was so, I don't know, I got totally carried away. I was just there for the reason of being there, I think, for the whole trip. Mashallah, it was an amazing experience. And my friends who surrounded me, and Umid-Jan, who just floated. I mean, there was a lot going on. And if it hadn't been for your smoothness or something, I mean, you never got ruffled. You just, okay. And that just permeated into the rest of us, I think. I mean, it certainly did me. I was, even at the airport, I felt I'd already started the retreat and the journey of this beautiful experience. And there's so many stories that I don't remember all the regiment that you're talking about. I don't remember being told, take care of the person to your right, take care of the person to your left. I don't remember any of that. And somehow I got all these, I'd gotten requests to do duas when doing the Umrah. And somehow I got them all done. It was like, how did that happen? Including the duas we were asked to repeat. So it was entering another dimension, I think. Thank you. Thank you very much. I can't tell you how grateful.
Well, I must have a better poker face than it has ever been recognized, or just enshrouded in a mantle of divine invisibility and forgiveness, because there were more than a few occasions in which I think I felt a little bit of angst, and I'll share one with you. Is I think Rabia Jan was talking about how the recommended time for us was to go for our Umrah at 6 a.m. the very first morning that we were there. And alhamdulillah, the travel agency that we had used for that, it's a learning experience for them, just as it is for us. And 6 o'clock becomes 6:15, 6:15 becomes 6:30, 6:30 becomes 7 o'clock. There's no guide. There's no Umrah guide showing up. And this is our first morning, and we're supposed to go for Umrah. And I think I very slowly felt my blood pressure kind of rising and rising and rising, while remembering every breathing meditation that Pirzia has ever taught me. I think I did the earth breath, the water breath, the fire breath, the ether breath. If there's a air breath, and probably made up a few breaths that no Sufi before has ever done, just to sort of keep things calm. And at that same moment, I get a WhatsApp message from a friend whom I'd never met in person, but we had been in touch. And he just says, "Oh, salam alaikum, I'm at the Kaaba. And I just did my own Umrah at 3 o'clock in the morning. How is it going?" And I was like, "We don't have a guide." And he was like, "Would you like one?" And I'm like, "Yes, please." We would very much. And he's like, "When?" I was like, now would be a really beautiful time." And so he just came over, and he was, mashallah, wonderful. And he was so clearly the person with whom we were supposed to have this experience. So alhamdulillah, I think, the older I get, the more I realize that really the goal of the path, in as much as I've been able to figure out so far, it's actually not to be immune to anger, to frustration, to sadness. It's navigating them. And it's learning that the same one who sends those challenges also sends the remedy. And how beautiful when you're held in the company of 25 friends, that you share those experiences together. And I've been doing these types of journeys to Turkey and Morocco for 20 some odd years. But I tell you, this is different, because nobody comes to Mecca and Medina for me. They come to Mecca and Medina for God and the Prophet. And that actually is such an extraordinarily liberating recognition that, all you have to do is just to hang on to each other and to support and love one another. And if the opportunity comes to share a few teachings here and there, you do so. And then you just get out of the way. Because they've come with all of their yearning and longing, and all of us have, and all of us continue to. I think I just, is that it? Is there any other friend who is there with us who wishes to speak? If you do, we would love to hear from you. But there's no obligation.
Could I just close out the reflections with maybe just a line of Nath?
Please, my Jan, please, please. Let me ping you.
Well, as many of you know, there's a whole body of tradition of Nath, which is focused not even just on the qualities of the Prophet ﷺ, but on that yearning, that longing for Medina. And in South Asia, it's a particularly powerful, beautiful strain of Nath, which shows up sometimes in Qawwali. So I'm just going to sing a little bit of one by Maulana Hali. And it says, Dayar Nabi, at the abode of the Prophet, and again, Pir, again, at the abode of the Prophet, with my lashes, I would kiss the gate of the haram. And sometimes I would kiss your blessed hem with my eyes. And sometimes I would kiss your daste karam, your most generous hand. And if destiny would only take me to Medina, which is of rahmati rahmat, which is rahma upon rahma, for that it's a khazina, it's a treasure. And those eyes that have witnessed Mecca and Medina, I swear to God, I would kiss those eyes. Teyare Nabi phir teyare Nabi hai. Teyare Nabi phir teyare Nabi hai. मैं पलकों से बाबे हरम चूम लूंगा मैं पलकों से बाबे हरम चूम लूंगा कभी उनकी दामन से आंखें मलूंगा कभी उनका दस्ते करम चूम लूंगा कभी उनका दस्ते करम चूम लूंगा मुक़द्दर मुझे ले तो जाए मदीना जो रहमत ही रहमत कहे खजीना मोहब्बत से उनकी है मामूर सीना मैं पलकों से बाबे हरम चूम लूंगा मैं पलकों से बाबे हरम चूम लूंगा जो देखाए हैं जाके शहरे मदीना मैं हो जाऊंगा उन से सीना बसीना those who have gone and witnessed Medina, with them I will become breast to breast, heart to heart. जिन आँखों से देखा हो मक्का मदीना वो आँखें खुदा की कसम चूम लूंगा कभी उनके दामन से आँखें मलूंगा कभी उनका दस्ते करम चूम लूंगा तैयारे नबी फिर तैयारे नबी है मैं पलकों से बाबे हरम चूम लूंगा
Thank you, Simi-Jan, and thank you all the beautiful friends who've shared your heart's impressions and the fragrance that you carry with you in such beautiful ways. We could just go home now and savor it. And that would not be such a terrible thing. But let me share a couple of images that I also wanted to bring to your attention. Okay. Bismillah. And all right. So one of the friends had mentioned that they had seen pictures of of the Kaaba, and many of us have seen documentaries about the Kaaba and about the Prophet's mosque. And there is something very different, and it was for me, about being there. And one of the ways that I describe it is, we were holding hands walking into the Masjid al-Haram and in the vicinity of the Kaaba. And I had the great blessing of holding the hand of my brother, Sayyidi Hamza, who is here with his equally luminous Noura. And he and I had been brothers before, and we're even more brothers now. And I was a little more than a little overcome, and so he was very gently reminding me to keep my glance down on the earth, and until we got very close. And as we were walking in, before I had actually seen the Kaaba, you feel its magnetic presence. And I don't know that I've ever experienced something quite like that before, where the energy of a place, the barakah of a place, the force of a place, you feel it in your body. And then as we walked and we entered, and we were told to lift up our glance and to look upon the Kaaba, there's a remarkable effect that I'm still sitting with, in that it's much more intimate than you would think. Walking in, there are these massive construction projects going on, and I've had my own feelings about the destruction of a lot of the historic sites and sacred sites, and the putting up of these monstrous kind of towers that look like something out of the Lord of the Rings. And then all of a sudden, when you walk inside the Masjid al-Haram and you see the Kaaba, you realize that the Kaaba is actually not in Mecca. It's actually nowhere on earth. It's this column, this pillar that connects earth and heaven and the throne of Allah. And at all times, it doesn't matter if you go at 8 o'clock in the morning or midnight or the afternoon, there are people doing the circumambulation, the tawaf, and it only stops for prayer. And then it just starts again, and men and women, different nationalities. And of course, what is taking place on earth, it's only mirroring and replicating what is taking place in heaven. So as the angels are whirling around the throne of God, we are walking around the house of God. And to remember that this is not the only Kaaba, that there's other celestial Kaabas above, and that we're just a reflection of it. And the Kaaba feels very, very intimate. And you walk closer and closer and closer, and it grows more and more and more majestic. And when you're standing at the vicinity of it, its grandness is just Jalali in ways that I cannot put into words. And I couldn't help but feel like something about that combination of intimacy and grandeur, it's a symbol of Allah being both closer to us than the beating of our hearts, and so vast and so grand that God is beyond all the infinite universes. So this is us in that first morning, a small group of us. There were more of us, of course. You see that the men all in the background are wearing this ihram outfit. It's two white pieces of cloth unsewn. And the women, many of them are wearing white, but women have more flexibility in terms of what they wear. And with the Kaaba in the background, and to be alone with the one without being lonely. To be alone with the one, but also in the company of friends, was such a powerful experience for us. This is probably a few more of our group that you see here. Saudi friends, Pakistani friends, Brazilians, Americans, UAE. I'm trying to think of any other group that might be Norwegians and others. The wearing of this ihram and the switching to the ihram is it's not only about what you wear, but it is a transformation of the state of the heart. So when you're in ihram, you do not harm any living thing. You don't even pluck a single strand of your hair. And in the old days, of course, when people would come on caravan, there is an area outside of Mecca, that the miqat, which would mark the point in which you would be switching into the ihram. And Sidi Hamza and Noura had one of their sons who had to exit Mecca and switch back into it at one point. But nowadays, of course, most of us are flying to come to Arabia. And that sacred territory is not only horizontal, it's also vertical. It extends all the way to heaven. So about half an hour before we land in Jeddah, the pilot came on the aircom system and made an announcement that those of you who are going on pilgrimage, this would be the time to switch into that state of ihram. And I think of all the times and places that I had thought about putting on the ihram, doing so in the bathroom of an airplane perhaps had not been what I had in mind. But it was so meaningful because I had tried it on once before. But I only wanted to make sure that it would fit and it would be appropriate, and then to switch into it. And the ihram that I wore is actually my Babajan's ihram, my father's ihram. And so 40 years before, he had worn it on Hajj and had kept it safe till he could pass it on to his children. And if I ever have the blessing of going back, inshallah, I will wear it until it's time for me to pass it on to my children. And I can't help but also recall that when I was putting it on, it was a reminder of the fact that the time will come where I will be wrapped again in something very similar to this. And the shroud that we're going to be wrapped in for burial is very similar. And if one actually prepares not only for that moment, but for what is through that moment, what is beyond that moment, then rather than having to live in denial of it and having to live in fear of it, it can actually be a friend that you welcome, because here you're with the friend, and beyond it we will be with the friend. As you're walking around the Kaaba, you see people just reaching on to grab by any way that they can the door to the Kaaba, and the Hajrul Aswad, the black stone at the corner. And how beautiful that we've been able to share these conversations before going, to see the Kaaba and to see the Kaaba as the heart, that there's a heart to the Kaaba and there's a Kaaba of the heart. And to take all of those teachings in making our time there so much richer and more meaningful, inshallah. This is when we're meeting at the Jeddah airport, and these friends arriving from different backgrounds. And to be at the Kaaba, this direction and this house of God towards which we have prayed for years and years and years, and then to be there, and to be there together and alone, to be in community and with the One. And yes, to know that we can find corners of the house of God to sit in and to have conversations about the Kaaba of the heart. It can be done. There may be a Saudi guard who comes and gets us to move after 15 minutes or so, but yeah, we can sit down as men and women in these corners and to share these beautiful teachings. And my gratitude to Sidi Hamza and to Ahmed for their gentle pleading with the Saudi guard, who had some questions about what we were doing, but we had that time, we had that moment. And then to realize that the Umrah, this more minor kind of pilgrimage, and just as the major pilgrimage, one of its key rituals is the running back and forth between Safa and Marwa. And we are reenacting the experience of Hajar when she was in the desert before there's really a Mecca. And she has her baby. Hazrat Ibrahim is not necessarily around in that moment. And she's running back and forth between these two hills looking for water. And it strikes you that this is one of those moments, one of the few moments, far too few moments in the history of our religious traditions where the ritual that we do is to walk in the footsteps of a woman, a Black woman, an African woman, an alone woman who is away from her people, away from her community, in this very harsh desert, before there are all of the infrastructure there. And she's frantically running back and forth looking for water until the water of life bubbles up from under her feet. And if Hajar had not run, Ismail would not have been. And if Ismail had not been, then the Habib would not have been. And that water, Zamzam, continues to flow till today. So to take really seriously the idea that this major ritual is asking us to walk in the blessed footsteps of this marginalized woman. And then to ask ourselves, who are the Hajars of today? And when do we see them? When do we honor them? There are so many beautiful moments of seeing friends and being seen by friends in the midst of this whole journey. And then each person brings their own yearning and their own longing to Mecca and to Medina. For many of us, this is a deepening of that thirst. And just like Hazrat Hajar, it's the thirst that brings about Zamzam. So many of the people who came, they're very open about the fact that they haven't hit the zenith of their spiritual life, right? And they know that. But they've come because there's that longing and because there's that yearning for things. So we don't wait on the path until somehow we've hit a pinnacle. I want to go back for 1 second and talk about this moment. You do this walking around the Kaaba 7 times before offering prayers. And, you know, in all the Sufi books, you read these beautiful accounts that when you first go to the Kaaba, you see the house, and then you see the house and the Lord of the house, and then you see only the Lord of the house. And everybody's experience is is different, and it's one of the reasons why I love to hear from our friends who have been there. And I will share this one part is that, we did those 7 tawafs, 7 times walking around. And I think the first 5 times of walking around, the only way that I can describe it is that I didn't experience myself. I didn't, I wasn't there. It was only Allah. I didn't hear the chanting. I'm surrounded by this sea of humanity, but it wasn't even at the point of, Ya Allah, please grant me this, and here's my laundry list of prayer requests that I have brought. There was only Allah. And after 5 times of walking around, slowly, it's almost like waking up from a dream, that you start to hear the labbaik chants that are going on around you. And, oh, there's a Malaysian group right here. And, oh, there's a Nigerian group. And there's a Pakistani family. And there's a Bangladeshi family sort of there. And you come back slowly to your senses. And that's a really powerful experience of having that sense of it's not even you and Allah. There's just Allah. And it's pure serenity. Pure serenity. So let me go back. We did take a visit one day of going around some of the religiously significant sites. There's the Jabal Nur, the Mountain of Light. And in the picture on the left, all those little white dots that you see, those are people climbing up the mountain to the Ghar Hira, to that majestic cave where the Habib, the chosen one, alayhi salatu wassalam, first received the revelation. And, certain sages like Rumi say that before he was the prophet, that the Habib would spend the equivalent of 1 out of every 12 months in retreat up this mountain. And we're on an air-conditioned bus, and we're being zoomed around Mecca. And then we get to the foothill of this mountain, and we realize, oh, dear heart, it would take 2 hours for a very healthy person to climb up this mountain. And the prophet, not yet the prophet, climbs it, and Hazrat Khadija comes, and she brings him food and sustenance and water. And I remember telling one of our friends that seeing the mountain of this place that I've read about and written about, it made me realize prophethood is not a one-man operation. Even when that one man is the chosen one. At the Hijra, the mountain that is behind us is Jabal Thawr, where the Habib and Hazrat Abu Bakr found shelter in. So this is that famous story of the spider web covering the opening of the cave, and pigeons resting on it to throw off the Meccans who were in hot pursuit of them. And then there is Medina. I shared with some friends that the same Qawwali tradition that Simi Jan sang so beautifully, you can't pick a favorite any more than you can pick a favorite among your children. But that Taj Dar Haram song, the original one, the Sabri Brothers one, might be forever in the pantheon. And where you ask Allah, Isi mahine chale, right? This month, let me go to Medina, this very month. And then you're there and you realize it is this month that you're there. It's not some future month. It's this very month that you get to go. And Sidi Hamza did such a beautiful job of reminding us that Mecca, it's a city of Jalal. And there's majesty and there's grandeur, And Mecca has a certain harshness to it. The landscape is harsh. It's filled with stony mountains. You could go for a long time in Mecca without seeing a tree. And you realize why God sent the Habib, the gentlest and the most merciful of beings, to a people who had never had a messenger before, because they were the ones most in need of the Rahmatun lil Alameen. And it also lets you realize that when the Prophet is leaving Mecca for Medina, and he tearfully says to Allah that Mecca is the most beloved place on earth to him, and had his people not driven him out, he would have never left. You know, it's easy to love Hawaii. It's easy to love Vancouver or Cape Town or Istanbul, or take your pick. To love Mecca means that you see the form and you see through the form. And to be a Muhammad, alayhi salatu wasalam, means that you really see through every phenomena, and it becomes beloved to you. And when we're walking there, that was such a reminder that these are the stones and this is the mountain where, as he's walking from his house with Hazrat Khadija to Jabal an-Nur, these are the stones that were speaking to him. Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah. Peace be unto you, O Messenger of Allah. There's something about being there and the stories being connected to a place. We took a high-speed train to go to Medina. It takes 2 hours. And we got off at the train station, did our first prayer at the train station. And the minute that we came outside, there's a fragrance in the air. It's like all of the trees and the flowers of Medina and the moisture of the air greet you. And you realize that Medina is truly the city of the Prophet. It has the Prophet's gentleness. It has the Prophet's beauty. And every day that we were there, we went to the Masjid al-Nabawi. And, you know, this just goes to show you how gracious our friends are. When they talked about their beautiful experiences, they very graciously left off the fact that some of us got COVID, and some of us had a respiratory thing, and some of us had a fever. But all of us had the fever of love. And all of us had caught that fever of being in love with the Prophet and with the one that the Prophet loves. And I've never in my life seen people treat the sickness of their body with the grace and the graciousness that they did. So to be in Medina, to go to the Prophet's mosque, to remember that this is where the Habib lived, this is where the Habib prayed and where he walked. And to see the love, the people that you see here, our dear friend in the middle, they had just met 4 days ago. But there is an alchemy that happens when you are with these kinds of dear and beloved friends. There's a German Muslim convert who has designed these ingenious umbrellas that now have become a kind of distinctive feature of being around the Masjid al-Nabawi, and it adds a shade and it adds a comfort and a coolness to the area around there. And So here I am with my beloved brother and an equally beloved nephew over there. I'm the short one. And to be at these places and to pray together, and then to also have some time for solitude and reflection is a gift, absolutely a gift. One of the oddities of this age of COVID and the quarantine is that there's now an app which came to preoccupy us a little bit about making a reservation to go to the Rauda. So the green dome that you see, you have to have a reservation now to go in, and they sometimes check and sometimes don't. Some of the blessed awliya who masquerade as the young men on our trip, they could just slip past the guards and make their way through. And mashallah, that's real barakah, sort of right there. But to get to go and to be inside the Rauda, and for most people, the chance to be as close as possible to the house in which the Habib lived, the place which was his home, his mosque. This is second only in sanctity and holiness to the Kaaba for us. And obviously it has been gilded over the years, and it used to be a very simple mud structure and palm trees, but it has been ornamented over the passing of the centuries. I think I'll pass over that. One of the things that I wanted to mention is you always see these Pakistani, Indian, and Bangladeshi workers inside the Prophet's mosque. And in this picture, they're wearing a mask, but oftentimes their masks are down or they're not wearing a mask. And every single one of them that I saw had the sweetest smile on their face, because you could just tell they just thought, I have the best job on the planet. I get to sweep and take care of the Prophet's mosque. And when it was my turn to go inside the Rauda, other than, of course, praying your heart's most luminous prayer, this is the place that we are told every place between the house of the Prophet and his mimbar is a garden from the gardens of paradise. And then there's also like a few markers that are particularly beloved. If you read Sufi poetry, you probably have read the story of the sighing palm tree, later on the sighing column. And the story is quite simple, that the Habib used to lean against a particular tree when he would be preaching and teaching. And at some point, when the crowds are getting to be bigger, one of the women has the idea of building a little mimbar, a little pulpit for him to sit on from some palm trees. And the Prophet agrees. And so he's no longer leaning against this tree. And when he goes to sit on the mimbar, the pulpit, that tree so misses the Prophet that it audibly sighs, cries out. It misses him. It misses his touch, misses his body. And so that sutun, that pillar, that column, is called the Hanana, the sighing palm tree. And Rumi loves this story because for him, are we any less? Shouldn't we at least be like the sighing palm tree? And so I wanted to know where this particular one was. And, some of the Saudi guards were perhaps not so cooperative, and they just wanted to get people through. And I asked one of the Pakistani friends, and he was like, oh, I'll show you. And he takes me by the hand, and he's like, this is the sighing palm tree. And this is the place where the Prophet used to sleep. And this is the pillar where Imam Ali used to keep vigil. And this is the one for Hazrat Aisha. And then like his friends all kind of joined in. And the love is real. and very palpable. So this is the sighing palm tree that today is represented by a column or a pillar. And there's the inscription, Ma bayna bayti wa minbari rawdatan min riyad al-jannah. Whatever is between this area that is between my bait, my home, and my mimbar, the pulpit, is a rawda, is a garden from Riyad al-Jannah, from the gardens of paradise. So just as, you know, the Kaaba is not really on earth, this place is also not really on earth. And it's good to have a sense of the more subtle and luminous realms to come. I forget where it was that I read this, but you know, many of the Sufis, they didn't care much for paradise. They didn't talk about paradise very much, and some of them, like Shibli, said, "There's nothing in paradise. There's no palaces in paradise. There's no huris in paradise. There's only Allah." And then there is someone who was asked one time, so why would you want to go to paradise? And his answer was, that's where the Habib is. And if the Prophet is there, he by himself is enough to aspire to that place. So there's a sign here, Assalamu ala Rasulullah, where you offer your salams to the Prophet. For the benefit of friends who may not be able to go, I made just a little short kind of video as walking past the place. So behind this wall, behind all of this ornamentation, 1400 years ago would have been the simple adobe mud house of the Prophet, where the ceiling would not have been much higher than the height of a person, and covered in palm leaves to provide some shelter from the sun.
يلا يا سيد يلا يا سيد مشي يا سيد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد يلا يا زاهر مشي يا سيد مشي يا سيد مشي يا سيد يلا يا زاهر مشي 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 يلا يا سيد يلا يا زاهر لا
And now for something a little different. So one of the challenges of being in Mecca and Medina is that it's quite difficult to find places where men and women can sit together and can have Sufi-ish conversations. And I'd known how beautiful it has been when we're in Turkey and Morocco to have these kinds of spaces, and especially in Morocco, where the aesthetic is second to none anywhere really in the Muslim world. And so I just made a prayer that a couple of months ago that, oh yeah, Allah, if it would be possible, help us find some place in Medina that doesn't look like one of those soulless corporate hotels. And apparently Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can work through anything, including Instagram. So the very next day, this Medina Riyadh, Beit Medina shows up on my Instagram feed. And I'm like, okay. So I write the guy and I was like, hi, the place looks really exquisite. And it's all built by Moroccan architects. And I was like, you would love to come here in December. And he goes, oh yeah, December 2023, we have a lot of availability. And I was like, no, December, like a few weeks from now. And mind you, at this time, we didn't have anybody really signed up for the program yet. But there was just a lot of tawakkul. And to rent out the whole place involved a few zeros. But I don't know, there was just a sense that if you reserve it, they will come. And so just an exquisitely designed space, this most wonderful kind of aesthetic, right in the shade of Mount Uhud. And so we started out by having our lessons on the Sirah, on the blessed life of the Chosen One, inside. And then when COVID came, then we switched to the outside place. And of course, there are palm trees. And Sidi Hamza led us in prayer in the middle of these very palm trees, alhamdulillah. And, you hear all these accounts from the Chosen One, that the whole earth is a masjid, the whole earth is a mosque. And then sometimes you actually have to go and pray on the soil and to pray with the earth, so that the pillars, yet again, are the date palms all around you. And I had a beautiful zikr. And those of you who are familiar with these kinds of calligraphy, you might recognize Haj Nuruddin, the Chinese calligrapher. Turns out he's, of course, one of the best friends of the owner of this house. And so, every day we got the blessing of having these Sirah discussions, the life of the Prophet, both as it is in the original sources and as they have been interpreted, inshallah, through Rumi and some of the other sages. And at some point, I hope that will also become one of these courses that I can put online and make available to friends. I will say one aspect of things. We have a dear friend of ours who was with us in Morocco, Basma. She herself is from Saudi. And I reached out to her and I was like, Basma Jan, I'm thinking of making a deposit of quite a few digits to rent out this whole Riyadh. And I don't know these people. I haven't met them. There's no Better Business Bureau. Like, can we just make sure this place is legit? And so she said two things. She said, oh, actually, I know the wife and we have worked together and, they're legit. I know the family. And then the second thing is the one that actually removed any hesitation and doubt. And she said, Umidjan, they are Ahl Medina. They are the people of Medina. And that was that. There really was this sense for her, and I took that very much to heart, that the perfume of the Prophet is there in Medina through these people. And once we got to stay there and be with them, you got to see it. I've never met multi-millionaires who serve you tea and bring you towels and are looking after each and every single guest and are driving you to the Masjid al-Nabawi. And it's not because they don't have help. They have a whole staff. But there's a way in which they looked at us as guests of the Prophet and received us that way and treated us that way. And it moved me to know that the barakah, the grace, the legacy, the manners, the adab of the Prophet is not just something that we can find in books, but you see it in the way that people live their lives. Went to Masjid Quba, the beautiful first purpose-built mosque in Islam. Mount Uhud, all of us have read the stories, but then to be in that place where the Prophet himself was almost, astaghfirullah, lost to humanity. to go to the wells where the Prophet loved to drink water from. And you can still go there and you can still drink from the places that these wells continue to flow. And the morning that we were leaving, it was raining in Medina. And yesterday, it was raining in Mecca. And I think we will end with just this reminder of this beautiful teaching that the Chosen One, alayhi salatu wassalam, whenever it would rain, and it does rain in Mecca, he would open up his turban, he would open up his tunic, and he would have the rain wash down his face, down his blessed beard, and down his chest. And he would say that, this friend has just come fresh from the heavens. Rather than isolating yourself from the elements, to embrace them and to remember that you yourself are nature. So something about these teachings and to live them and relive them in these wonderful, wonderful ways. All right. So today's been kind of a different pace of things. We haven't done the breakout rooms. We're not going to do the breakout rooms, or the zikr. But I thought it would be important to have an opportunity to share some of these fruits and to hear from our friends who had been, and one of the things I wanted to also share with you is being in community with friends. It's also been reminding me that, it's good to also sometimes change the pace of things and not just have me come with like a prepared topic and to share that, but sometimes to also change things up a little bit. And so I think what we might do, inshallah, is for the January session, I think we're going to have it as kind of a Q&A conversation. And if there's topics that you would like for us to discuss, please email me ahead of time, or we can also do it then. And this part, we're just going to shift a little bit because there's a few other friends who are going to be joining us now. Inshallah, if we are so called, and you don't go to Mecca and Medina, you have to be called. And if we are called again, inshallah, we would do our best to go in December again of next year. But at 3:30, which is now in Eastern time, we have a few friends who might be joining us because they have an interest in joining us on the programs in Turkey and Morocco. So if that is of interest to you, please feel free to stay. And if not, thank you for being with us. Thank you for taking part in this conversation. And inshallah, we will see you in the new year. And the dates have already been posted, and I will put that in the follow-up email that I will send you. And if for some reason the idea of being with us in Turkey and Morocco is of interest, please stay on. Otherwise, have a beautiful time. May God bless you, and see you, inshallah, next time. So I'm going to invite the other friends to come and be with